Thomas Goldcamp here with 24/7 Sports and Swamp247.com, coming at you one day after Florida's annual Pro Day. I wanted to get into breaking down some of the performances that we saw from the Florida Gators now that we've had a chance to get some official time, some official measurements from the annual Pro Day. So I guess how we're going to do this, first off, I think I'm going to give you my initial takeaways, kind of the things that jumped out at me. So let's start with the best performer on the day. I don't think there's any question about it that cornerback Marco Wilson came away as the most impressive player on the day. Obviously, a lot of eyes were on Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, Kyle Trask. But Marco Wilson was a guy that was kind of forgotten about. You know, obviously became a little bit of a villain in the fan base following that infamous shoe toss against LSU that cost Florida the game. That's something that I think a lot of NFL teams are going to be digging into. And when we talked to Marco Wilson after the team's pro day, he said, hey, they've come at me with that. And I think from that standpoint, I thought Marco Wilson handled things very well at his pro day. But let's talk about the numbers, because what he did from an athletic standpoint was pretty insane for a guy that really, we knew that he was athletic coming out of high school. I don't think we knew that he was this athletic. So some of the numbers, he did 26 reps of 225 pounds on the bench press. For a cornerback who's got relatively long arms, that's a really, really good result. Would have been one of the best in really the entire NFL Combine a year ago. I think it was something like 27th out of all players at the NFL Combine last year. So obviously a very, very strong guy. I think that gives NFL teams the impression that he should be able to play pretty physically at the line of scrimmage. And we'll talk about the game tape in a little bit, because obviously that tells at times a different story with Marco Wilson. But more on his numbers from Pro Day. I think the event that really kind of caught everybody's eye and really got the entire indoor practice facility in a buzz was the vertical jump. When Marco Wilson came up to do the vertical jump, I don't know if you've ever seen the vertical jump, how they measure that, but it's basically a standing platform with a bunch of slats, and players jump and try to slap as many of the slats as they can, and that kind of tells you how high the jump is. Marco Wilson cleared every single slat, jumped high enough to clear the entire rack, clocked in with a 43.5-inch vertical jump. So obviously a guy that has a lot of natural jumping ability. Going back to, again, knowing that he was an athletic recruit in high school, this is a guy that used to be able to do backflips, and I think at one point made a one-handed catch while doing a backflip. So clearly a phenomenal athlete. He ran a 4.37 twice. Both of his attempts were clocked at a 4.37. Again, these times are unofficial. These are hand timers. I think what we're seeing across the country right now is a lot of the 40 times are a little bit lower than you would probably expect if they were in a more controlled setting, laser timed at the NFL Combine. But regardless, relative to the other guys at the event, 4.37 is outstanding. It was the fastest time that we saw yesterday, even though Kadarius Toney turned in an excellent time as well. So, I think for Marco Wilson, the question's really going to boil down to, did he do enough athletically to impress, to get a team to take a shot on him a little bit earlier in the draft? Because I think when you flip on his game tape, there's a lot of problems. And whether it's the way that he was coached at Florida, whether it was the scheme defensively that was at fault, he never really was able to recover, I think, his form from his freshman season. When him and C.J. Henderson played as freshmen, Marco Wilson, I think in a lot of people's eyes, was the guy that had more promise and maybe had a little bit better of a freshman season. Obviously, he goes through the torn ACL, the following season early in the year, and I think it took him a while to kind of get back up to speed. You can see clearly from his athletic results, that's no longer a factor. That is not holding him back at all. So I think, if anything, it's going to be NFL teams weighing whether or not there's a mental hurdle that Marco Wilson has to overcome. And I think certainly when you look at an incident like the LSU game, obviously teams are going to poke and prod at that a lot. And I thought Wilson did a good job of really kind of truthfully answering the question, saying, hey, man, I'm not proud of that, but, I've really been through a lot since then. I've heard a lot of nasty, kind of vile things from fans on the internet, and he's not going to live that down anytime soon. I think he's aware of that. So, knowing how to manage that and kind of handle the pressure, I think, we'll see how convinced NFL teams were by what he said. But to me, I think when you couple that response with the results that he put on the field in those workouts, Marco Wilson came away, to me, the guy that far and away, I think, helped his draft stock the most yesterday. So on the flip side, let's talk about the the guys that may be disappointed. And again, going back to hand times, hand measurements, all that, as far as the 40-yard dash, I don't think there were a whole lot of disappointing results. I think things tended to skew, at least historically, more towards better numbers than worse numbers. But one guy I thought that definitely did not do himself any favors in Florida's Pro Day yesterday was safety Brad Stewart. He's a guy that, had a lot of off-the-field issues at Florida, and when he was on the field, you certainly saw some glimpses of his potential. Was a guy that was considered very athletic out of high school. I thought the times kind of didn't show that yesterday. And, whether or not that's a one-off, unfortunately, this is not the year you want to have an event like that. You didn't have the NFL Combine. Pro Day was really your one chance to shine, and maybe he gets some workouts with teams following Florida's Pro Day, but he turned in a 4.68 and a 4.59 40-yard dash. Neither of those times are all that great for a safety who really is not the biggest safety, only I think repped 11 times on the bench. And then his short shuttle, which is kind of supposed to show short area quickness, was really the worst among any of the skill guys not named Kyle Trask. And you're not expecting Kyle Trask to move that well. So I thought Brad Stewart, when you watch the positional drills as well, kind of, backpedaling, getting in and out of cuts, I just didn't see it. He looked slow. It looked a little bit like he came in without having had a whole lot of preparation. And so I think if you were looking at a disappointment from Florida's Pro Day, I'd have to circle Brad Stewart. I thought between him and Donovan Steiner, Steiner, you kind of expected it. We've talked for years about, Donovan Steiner has a very high football IQ, is a guy that you really love on and off the field. Well, I guess off the field. Just doesn't have the athleticism to play at the SEC level. And I think we saw that. And Steiner actually turned in better 40 times than Brad Stewart. I mean, when you're wondering why Florida's safety play has been bad, I don't think you have to look anywhere past that. Florida safeties just athletically the last couple of years were not cut out to do it. And again, I don't know if Brad Stewart just had a bad day or was unprepared for his pro day. I do tend to think he plays a little bit faster on tape than a guy like Steiner. But clearly you can see Florida had some issues in the secondary for a reason. I thought Brad Stewart came away probably not helping his stock a whole lot. Let's talk about the big three. Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney. Those were three guys that I think all the NFL scouts in the building wanted to see. 31 of the 32 NFL teams were in town for yesterday's pro day, and I believe it was 5 head coaches. So you had a lot of interest. I can't remember the last time Florida had 5 head coaches at a pro day. Typically, you only see 1 or 2. Mike Tomlin's a guy that comes around a lot. Bill Belichick's a guy that comes around a lot. You had 5 NFL head coaches, including Urban Meyer, there yesterday. I think a lot of that is the interest in Kyle Pitts, the interest in Kadarius Toney. Anytime you have a potential first-round pick you're evaluating, you want to go see him in person. And I think that speaks to both of those guys being potential high first-round draft picks. So Kyle Pitts, I thought going into Florida's pro day, Kyle Pitts maybe had the most to lose out of anybody. And the reason I say that, when you're projected as a top 10 pick and people are expecting you to go out and post really great athletic numbers, measure in really well, there's really only one place to go. You can't really exceed expectations. And I almost look at it as the inverse of a guy like Van Jefferson a couple years ago. I thought Van Jefferson going into his pro day had nowhere to go but up, because here's a guy that you've seen it on film. You have everything that you need to know on film, both with Van Jefferson and Kyle Pitts. You've kind of already got your opinion formed on both of those guys. And so what you're really looking for is you're looking for things that would maybe cause you to question it. And so in Van Jefferson's case, the reason he could only go up was because nobody was really expecting a blazing 40 time, great short shuttles, all that. And then Van Jefferson, went out and put together pretty good numbers. You see him rise into the second round. I think on the flip side, Kyle Pitts, what he had to do yesterday was just show that he is the guy that everybody thinks he is. And he absolutely did that. I think the one thing that caught a lot of NFL scouts' eye, his wingspan. He measured in at 83 3/8 of an inch. That is apparently the largest wingspan, or longest wingspan, however you want to call it, by any guy entering the NFL draft. Of course, the guys that have been measured in the last 20 years in terms of receivers and tight ends. So absolutely phenomenal catch radius. I don't think that comes as any surprise to anybody that has watched Kyle Pitts over the last couple of years. But then he really followed it up, and aside from a vertical jump that was only 33.5 inches, not amazing. I thought everything else was really good. Ran a 4.44 40-yard dash twice. Again, both unofficial, but you could tell he was moving. And then I think his short area times impressed a lot of people too. I don't have the exact numbers on those on me, but I know that they were quite impressive in terms of the 3-cone drill and the short shuttle. So this is a guy that, what you saw yesterday was you saw the numbers back up what you see on tape, which is that Kyle Pitts has a lot of short area quickness, and that's how he kind of creates separation in routes. Then he's also got deep speed. I mean, this is really a guy that could play receiver absolutely right away if you wanted him to. Now, Kyle Pitts did say all the NFL teams he's talked to are looking at him strictly as a tight end. And I think, that's just a designation in today's game. You know what teams are going to do with Kyle Pitts. They're going to use him as that Darren Waller, Travis Kelce type matchup problem, where you can flex him all over the formation and really use him to take advantage of matchup nightmares. I thought Kyle Pitts had a great day. Again, didn't do anything at all to hurt himself, which was really the only thing he had to worry about going into yesterday. Kadarius Toney, let's talk about him. I think a lot of people that watched him at Florida over the years maybe didn't expect him to clock a phenomenally low 40. And the reason I say that is there were a couple times during the course of his career where he was caught from behind and maybe didn't break away from guys in the open field the way you would expect a top-end guy to do. I kind of personally was expecting him in the low 4.5s range just based on that. Well, I was wrong. Kadarius Toney came out and absolutely blazed it. He ran a 4.39 and a 4.41. So that's going to absolutely, I think, cement him in the first round of the draft. I think he's a guy that could even work his way into the middle of the first round. I think he showed teams a lot of what he could do yesterday. And then obviously he turned in an 11-foot 4-inch broad jump. So you see just the explosive ability. Again, I think anybody that has watched Kadarius Toney knows that he can juke, knows that he can cut, knows he has the short area quickness. But you saw all that confirmed yesterday. I thought he caught the ball very well. So speaking of the catching, the throwing workouts, let's talk about Kyle Trask, because he's a guy that right now, most analysts do not have him kind of in that upper tier of quarterbacks. You know, the Zach Wilson, the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Field. They don't have him on that elite level right now. And I think the reason for that is quite simple. I think a lot of teams, a lot of scouts are concerned about his mobility, about, whether or not he can hold up, when things are moving quicker in the pocket. And I think, the thing that stands out to me, and I know the SEC Network guys that were broadcasting Florida's Pro Day yesterday used the word statue in the pocket. I take issue with that a little bit, because I think if you watched Kyle Trask, he really has an uncanny ability to move himself within the pocket, feel the pressure, almost without losing any focus. He's able to shift around in the pocket while still keeping his eyes downfield and going through reads. And I think that's probably, for me, one of the most underrated aspects of his game. The other would be his touch on his throws. I think he throws a very, very catchable ball, has very good timing. I came away from watching his throwing workout on the SEC Network, and again, media was not allowed, so we're really looking just at what the TV showed us, and the camera angles, probably a little bit harder to judge than if you're there in person. I thought Kyle Trask started off a little shaky. A lot of the short underneath throws, he just didn't quite have the timing and the touch. He had receivers reaching behind them once or twice. I know he threw one really wobbly ball that was high. Missed a couple routes on the sidelines. But I did think some of that was probably due to the conditions. Florida had the indoor practice facility open, but it was open air where they had the garage doors lifted. It was a very, very hot and muggy day in Gainesville yesterday. And you could see Kyle Trask was constantly wiping his hands on the towel, trying to get a little bit better grip on that football. I thought he settled in a little bit when he got more into his intermediate throws, and I think that's where Kyle Trask really shines. I think the biggest thing he had to show on those intermediate throws is that he can get it out there with the velocity that you need to. And I came away about what I expected. I did hear Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network was impressed with the velocity and the kind of push that Trask had on his throws. And so that's going to be where Trask has to convince NFL teams that he can make those timing throws into windows with enough velocity that he still has the same level of success in the NFL that he had in college. I thought his deep balls, for the most part were pretty good. I did notice his deep balls were sailing a little bit to the outside on several of the throws, but I think he doesn't have a cannon. He's not a Trevor Lawrence or a Felipe Franks in terms of ability to really push it down the field. But I think, again, he throws a very catchable ball. I thought Kyle Trask did what he needed to. He clocked in the 5.1s range in terms of his 40-yard dash. So, nothing terribly surprising there. I don't think he did anything really to hurt himself. On the flip side, I don't know that he helped himself a ton. So I thought it was kind of just a so-so day for Kyle Trask. But again, this is a guy that has all the game tape in the world. And again, it only takes one NFL team to like you to say, hey, this is a guy that would fit our system very well. We need a very cerebral guy. We don't really prioritize some of the dual threat ability that a lot of NFL teams have moved to. And if Kyle Trask can get that, I think you're still talking about a guy that goes, probably in the second round. Maybe he slips to early third, but I just think there's too many processing tools there to really avoid him past that range. I think NFL teams are going to take a shot on him by that time. One last note in closing here, I think Stone Forsythe was a guy that I think hasn't been talked about a lot in NFL draft circles, but I thought he had a very productive pro day. He checked in at 6'8", was a little slimmed down at 307, and I think that helped him a good deal in kind of showing NFL teams that he's actually more mobile than people think. I thought his short area times were very good. He was a guy that was in the 5'1" range on the 40-yard dash, which is pretty good for a guy that's 6'8", 307, and is an offensive lineman. And then he repped 25 times on the bench press at 225 pounds. So very impressive workout for Stone Forsythe. I think he also came across very good in the interviews with the media. I would expect that to carry over with NFL teams. And I think Stone's going to be playing with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. You know, he kind of laughed when he said, you know, I don't know why they're, you know, not as high on me on draft boards, but he does feel like the NFL is going to respect the tape that he put out and the fact that he blocked, you know, the blind side for a quarterback that was a Heisman Trophy finalist. He said he thinks that's really a feather in his cap. So I thought that was a good day for him. But all in all, I thought Florida's pro day was pretty successful. I thought the top end guys, none of them really hurt themselves. I think it was more, you know, guys that were trying to make a case for themselves in the back half of the draft that probably didn't do so. Another guy I hadn't mentioned yet, safety Sean Davis, didn't get to participate a whole lot in the workouts. He kind of looked like he tripped up and maybe injured something in the 40-yard dash and then didn't participate in the rest of the stuff after that. So disappointing day for him. He's one of those guys that I thought maybe could get into the middle rounds with a good showing based on his athleticism and whatnot, but he wasn't able to show teams that. So an unfortunate day for him, but overall, a very successful Florida Pro Day. I think this is the kind of pro day that you want to see going forward. You want 5 NFL head coaches in town. You want first-round guys that are showing out and really taking command of their workouts. And you know, really, Florida didn't have any guys, I thought, that really just bombed. You know, we talked about Ja'Kai Polite a couple years ago, a guy that really, really hurt his draft status with a poor pro day. You know, I thought Brad Stewart was the only guy that would even come close to that territory. And, you know, I just think it was a pretty successful day for Florida. So that'll do it for this video, guys. I just wanted to break down my thoughts from Florida's Pro Day. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We're going to start cranking out more content again. I know I had said a week or two ago that, you know, we slowed down in content a little bit because I had been under the weather and had to get COVID tested. I'm feeling great. I'm excited about the channel. I know that you guys have given some really positive feedback. So continue supporting the channel, hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.